How are you?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm good. Where are you?
I am in the woods. I am in the cabin
You
where
are in the woods.
I
Oh my God, wow.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
you're getting lots done?
I am so much. Yeah. It's awesome.
Ah, that's awesome. That is great. So, what are
Yes.
we doing today?
So this is, like I told you, the Save the World podcast, and it is
Yep.
sometimes serious, sometimes silly take on how to improve ourselves and the world around us. And I was really excited to talk to you because I know, first of all, you are making changes for yourself and you're out there and you're going and getting it, which I love. But also your company and your business is really built around helping people and making their experience better to translate to better business. So I just wanted to kind of
Yes.
talk to you about that. Can you tell us a little bit about your company and what you guys are doing?
Yeah, sure. So, you want to start now?
Yes. Yeah.
All right. All right. Awesome. Okay. So, my company in Australia, WattsNext, that started 11 years ago. And the main purpose for that business was to create great workplaces because I personally believe that when you go to work, if you work for a really good workplace or you have a workplace that works for you, then when you leave at the end of the day, you're more likely to put good things out into the world. So you're more likely to have positive relationships at home, contribute to the community, be fit and healthy. And on the flip side of that, I think if you have a workplace that is not so good, the same can happen where you can go home and snap at your partner and decide to lie on the couch and not get involved in the community. And I think that that has a ripple effect on the world. So if my vision was that if I could create as many great workplaces around the world, then the individuals within those workplaces would then go out as individuals and do good things, and we'd have a ripple effect, and that would make the world a better place. So yeah, that's why it started, really.
Yeah. And so you have been in business for 15 years. Is that right?
So the business started 11 years ago. Actually, we just had our 11th birthday on the weekend. And the purpose, so the mission was about creating great workplaces, but I specifically wanted to work with small to medium businesses, so businesses under 100 staff, because I felt that that's such a challenging space for the business owner, because they usually put their house on the line, and a lot of risk goes into creating a small business. But also, particularly in Australia, small businesses are the largest employer, and really they get no support and benefit from the government, no tax breaks or anything like that. And I know here in the US is also a massive employer, and so I wanted to support those small businesses because I felt that there wasn't enough support, and it's also really challenging. But also for those individuals that decide to work with small businesses, that's risky. There's often not as much security, not as much opportunity to earn or progress in your career. And I really admire people that choose to support those small business owners.
Yeah. I do think the situation's similar for small business here as in Australia.
Mm.
And so one of the things that you talk about is high performance teams. And would you
Mm-hmm.
say, so I've worked now in my day job for enterprise employers and for super small businesses, like 3 people, and then some around like
Mm-hmm.
40. And
Yeah.
so I always used to tell people, when you're working, people are like, oh, do you miss it? Like, or do you like working at this big company? And I would say you work harder at smaller businesses, even if the company like making less money, even if your job title's not as important, like you're doing more, you're wearing more hats. Is that something that
Yeah.
you come across a lot?
Oh, absolutely. There's a lot less places to hide when you work for a small business than there is if you work for a large corporate. And I think that there's just you're closer to what's on the line when you work for a small business. So you really feel it if there's any obstacles. So if a business is struggling to get work, or there's a downturn, then everyone feels that. also the same that when there's an influx of work, everyone has to pull together and work those extra hours and as you said, put on different hats and help each other out. And I don't think that happens so much in large enterprise. So, yeah, I mean, performance, I think, is more noticeable and more critical within a smaller team.
Yeah. And so we actually got the opportunity to meet at BoysCon, which was amazing.
And so amazing.
I loved it so much. And so this is actually me taking my homework and saying I need to start a podcast. That's what this is.
I know. I know it is. Yeah. That's why I want to support you, because it's so cool. Like you're putting it into action, which is amazing.
Thank you. Well, thank you for supporting it. And I remember we were talking, you were just kind of telling me about your company, and you were saying that what's surprising and the most surprising thing to you is that in all the companies you've worked for, the biggest things are really the smallest things, like remembering people's birthday. And like, can you talk a little bit about that? Because that really I was surprised by.
Yeah. I'm a big believer in the little things are the things that make all the difference. I'm actually just finalising a little ebook at the moment on the little things that I've put in place, whether it be in our business or personally or with my team, that it's really interesting that the impact. So, recognising an employee's birthday or their anniversary date and making a bit of a deal about it goes so much further often than some of the things that we expect around perks and stuff like that. And we noticed that I'll give you a couple of examples of things that we've put in place in our office, which have had really interesting results. So we put in place a car park for when clients or people come to visit us, and we have a car park sign which has their name on it when they arrive. And so if someone's coming to meet one of our team, they get a text message saying, we're really looking forward to seeing you today, your car park will be waiting for you, and then they turn up and their name is like on the car park with the VIP sign, and they come in and have this experience. Now, we've actually won big pieces of work because people were so impressed by the feeling they got around having a car park with their name on it. And it's the most simple process. We just type it up and stick it on the front, on the car park sign when someone's coming. And we get so many compliments and comments about that very small activity that we always do. So that's something that we do for our clients. But we noticed also, so one of the other things I put in place for our staff was what we call a dream catcher. So when anybody is employed, starts with what's next, we get them to fill out the dream catcher, which is basically 15 things that they would love to have or do in their lifetime. And it can be as big as anything or just little things. So it could be, some people have put things like they want to swim with sharks, and then someone wants to go skydiving, another person wants to learn a musical instrument or buy a house in the south of France, that sort of thing. And then what I do is I utilise that when I'm buying birthday gifts, anniversary gifts, or to reward them for, a great piece of work. So rather than do a traditional give movie tickets or even in some cases a pay increase, I would refer to the dream catcher and then get them something that specifically aligns to one of their goals or dreams. And that has such a bigger impact that lasts and they talk about with their family and their friends than giving them, a cash bonus or something like that. So that's been really, really effective, and we've implemented that into a number of clients as well.
That's amazing. That sounds like personalized gifts is so small, but if you think about it, that makes such a huge difference to your day to day.
Yeah.
Like my boss.
Oh, totally. And dreams. Exactly. And my boss remembers what's important to me. I'm really early on. I had a young girl who was at college, and she was doing some casual work with us, and she helped me move offices, and we spent the weekend and after hours, and she was just so helpful, and she didn't really have to do that. Anyway, I looked at her dream catcher, and she had on there that she one day wanted to buy a house in the south of France. So obviously I couldn't do that, but I went and bought her a book on houses in the south of France and just gave that to her and wrote a little note saying, thank you so much. And if, your work with your work ethic, I know that you'll one day achieve your dream of buying this house or whatever. And like, it was, at the end of the day, it was what, $20, and, had a huge impact. So this is one of the things that we like to say to small business owners, is that you don't have to try and compete with large enterprise from a financial perspective. There are lots of different things that you can do that are really hard to do in large enterprise. In fact, like it would be hard to do a dream catcher, for example, in an enormous business. But small businesses can leverage their size by doing the little things that will mean that people will stay and perform at a higher level. So yeah, they're the things that I think are really important.
That was going to be my next question, is at what size business can you scale that, do you believe, to any size business? And
look,
what's kind of like your thought on that?
Yeah, look, I think all of those little things that we do can absolutely be scaled. I think that they're hard to implement when you're already really large. But when you're small and you start, with 5 people and you put in processes and systems that are culture focused, then as long as you've got that system in place and you grow with that. So as long as departments, and obviously as someone owns it, and I think with anything, if we sort of getting along a culture perspective, as long as it comes from the top, then things can stick. But the minute, like, we've had companies that have wanted us to, implement great culture initiatives, but ultimately the owner or the CEO hasn't been that engaged. It's more like they've read an article or listened to a podcast and heard that they should be doing this, but they don't really believe it themselves. And it never works. It never works in that scenario. Like, they really have to be the leader and believe in those things. And then I think all of those things are scalable in that sense.
That's awesome. So I know something else that we both have in common is that we both love New York. And so I just wanted to talk to you about, how's it going in New York? Like, what are you up to, and why do you love it so much?
Yeah. Look, New York is absolutely my passion place. I think I really think it's like the center of the universe. It's like the heartbeat. The energy and vibe here is seriously contagious. And I'm actually, as I say this, looking out over the Empire State Building. So I'm being doubly inspired. But I think that it gives you the feeling that anything is possible, and everyone you meet is here because they have a dream and they're wanting to give that a go. And I just think that being around people that are here to live their dream has a massive flow-on effect. So yeah, I don't know. I love the vibe. I love the diversity of the people. There's so many different people from so many different backgrounds doing all weird and wonderful things. And so I think it's an incredible cultural experience. But for me personally, it has the energy that I need, and the opportunities are endless. So I've come here to start a new business, which is called WattsNext PX. So it is similar to my Australian consulting firm, although we're only doing one element. We're really focusing on people performance at a founder level and helping entrepreneurs and founders reconnect to their vision, mission, values, ensuring that their organisations really make sense and can perform at their peak, and that the people that work within their business really understand what a good day looks like, what a good day's work looks like, and how they can best perform. So it's really focused on increasing performance, but working with founders. So that's what I'm here to do. And I'm right at the very, very beginning of my journey. And certainly there's always this fear of, what am I doing? And, can I make this work? But I really think at the end of the day, you've just got to give stuff a go. And if you really just go for it, I don't think you really ever fail.
Well, I love what you just said about what does a good day look like for me, because I asked myself that question more on the macro level, like, what does success look like for me? I can't remember, a couple years ago I heard someone say that, and I was like, oh. And I think about that all the time. So what does that look like for you? Like, what is a good day for you?
Well, I think sort of on a macro level, because I often get asked what is success, and for me, success is just really enjoying the journey. For me, there's not an end point. So I certainly have. I certainly have lots of goals and milestones, but I don't really have sort of the Everest. For me, I think it's as long as I'm really loving the journey and I'm being challenged and I'm meeting great people and expanding myself, then I feel like I'm being successful. On a more of a micro level, from what does a good day look like, I think that as long as I'm doing things that are getting me one step closer to whatever that next milestone is, and that doesn't have to be a huge step, as long as it's something towards it. And because often I think that it's not until after the fact that you realise that that chance meeting or that one thing you did was the thing that resulted in you achieving the goal. And I think often you don't really realise it at the time. So, you know, if you can say yes and just keep progressing and doing the things every day that you know will move you forward, then one of those is going to be the thing. And so that's sort of how I look at whether I've had a successful day. If I'm stagnant or going backwards, but stagnant particularly, that's when I'm like, okay, I need to give myself an uppercut and sort of get out of the funk and just do something. Like, it doesn't even matter if it's very big. It's just something that's heading towards the ultimate vision. So yeah, that's how I sort of break it down.
I like that. And so I have a question now. Your business is very successful in Australia, and the new PX, the WattsNext PX, you're starting completely over in like a new market, a new country. Like, are you excited about that? Does it feel like starting over, or does it feel like a continuation? Like, what are your thoughts around that?
Yeah, so I definitely feel like I'm in startup mode because, as you said, I'm in a completely new country. I'm starting from scratch. I don't have any clients and a relatively small network. So it is very startup. However, when I started WattsNext 11 years ago, I didn't have anything at all. So I hadn't even done any work. I didn't even really understand my product. Whereas now my product and service I've been doing for a long time. I know what works and what doesn't. So I'm really clear on that, and pricing and all of those sorts of things that really I had to learn along the way last time. So I think the difference now is more understanding the market. It surprises me how different Australia and the US are in relation to just our language, you know, how we refer to things and the way we speak. We all speak English, but actually we actually communicate quite differently. So for me, it's really understanding the market and you know, how challenging is it going to be to win work, and what is the successful ingredients for that. So that's sort of the stuff that I don't know and that I'm going to work out along the way, which I think is the cool part about it. In addition to WattsNext, I've done other startups in tech, which are still in relatively early stages, and they're completely new because I hadn't been in that space before. So this one, I'm super excited, and I'm just, probably the best word to describe where I'm at the moment is I'm just really curious as to how this is going to play out, and what's ahead of me. I mean, I'm a big believer that you create your journey, but I know that there's some really cool things ahead of me that I, won't have ever experienced. I'm just curious to see how it all goes.
And so you mentioned your network, and I know something that you mentioned to me also was there's a particular entrepreneur group that's global. Have they really helped you now that you're in New York, and what's the name of that group? Yeah,
so I'm part of Entrepreneurs Organisation. We refer to it as EO. And that's a global network of, I think, around about, maybe it's about 16,000 entrepreneurs around the world. And they have chapters in all the different locations. I'm on the board of the Brisbane chapter, but obviously next year we'll be joining the New York chapter. And that has been really critical for my development and network. I've gone into business with a few EOers. I've just learnt a lot because it's meant that I could be surrounded by people that are sort of where I want to be. or have done things that I want to do. And that's great when you can learn from others' mistakes and successes. So that's been great, and certainly has helped me with the network. And I found that in New York specifically, my experience has been everyone wants to help you. So, if you go out to people and say, hey, I've arrived, this is what I'm doing, this is what I need, people are more, really excited to be able to connect you to people or give tips, give advice, and that I have found just amazing. And it hasn't been hard to sort of expand that network. So I'm sort of looking forward to continuing to do that.
What are some other tips you have for adding to your network if you're maybe like a really early stage entrepreneur?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this was so critical for me when I started my first business, because back then there was no social media and there were no co-working spaces. The term entrepreneur wasn't really used. So it just wasn't like how it is now. I mean, it's so much easier to build a network just through social media alone without even having to meet anyone. I mean, the networks that I've built just through Twitter, but also Insta and Facebook, have been really interesting. So for me, I think that building your network is probably the most critical thing in business. Your network is the most critical thing. So you have to get out and meet people, whether it be going to events, or I did a lot of just asking people if I could buy them a coffee and pick their brain. I've always done a lot of that, which has been really helpful because then people connect you to more people. But I would be suggesting to people, get out and go to events and talk to people, not just stand there with your friend or whatever, just talk to people, and then also utilise social media. It's such a good way to expand your network, and it really is like getting to know people on a personal level, I have found. So, if I look at it now and say, it's going to be so much easier now that social media, now that we have social media compared to when I first started.
Yeah, I can definitely say that that's true. In addition to meeting you in person and kind of meeting people at other events, I have made so many friends in the comments of YouTube videos and all kinds of things like online based on certain posts and hashtags. And they're people I go to now, people I like take real advice from and like really talk to and keep up with their life. And I've never met them in person. So
yeah,
I definitely think that that's true, and that's like the future. And I think of those people like as people that I know in real life that I would ask business advice to. It's kind of
yeah, definitely. Yeah. I think like ultimately building your network is the most important thing in business. I really think that that's probably what's helped me the most, is that I've had a big focus on that the entire journey.
So when you moved to New York, would you say that you kind of like started cold, like you just showed up, or did you do like a lot of homework and kind of like online networking like we're talking about before you moved? How was that transition?
Yeah, I'm not the best planner or preparer, so like I tend to find that I'm better off if I jump in and then I have to make it work. So even when I first started in business, I remember when I first employed my first employee, and I really couldn't afford them at the time, but I knew it was sort of a chicken and egg situation where, if I didn't have an employee, I really wasn't going to expand, but I actually didn't have enough money to employ someone. So I went, okay, well, I'll just employ someone and then I have to make it work. And that's sort of what I've done throughout my whole business journey. Now, for some people, that doesn't work at all. It depends on your risk appetite. And I don't have an aversion to risk, really, because I've always started with nothing. And I think when you start with nothing, you don't feel as concerned about losing everything. So I think that is probably why I'm willing to take more risks. But for me, I've sort of I did a bit of research. I came and spent a lot of time here, but I was really more just observing. Like I was observing, would I really want to live here, or is this just my haven that I run away to? And if I do want to live here, do I think that I could actually build a business here? How hard will it be to start something up from scratch with really no network? And so I did a bit of that, and then I sort of pretty quickly thought, you know what, it's worth giving it a go regardless. So I've sort of come here and gone, well, this is it. I've employed someone who's starting with me next week, and we're basically going to start on Monday with like a blank canvas, and
That's
just
amazing.
go for it. So yeah, it's cool. I mean, I that sort of approach works for me, but I can understand that for others, that's not. I think you've got to run your business in alignment to who you are. I had very early on in my career, I had so many business coaches advising me to act and behave in a certain way that fit a certain model. And that just wasn't who I was. And I was constantly told, oh, that will never work. And, oh, I had 3 children whilst I was growing my first business, and the amount of times I had people say, oh, you're having another baby, oh, well, then your business obviously isn't going to work. But I always just was like, well, you know, when you want something, you just make it work, and you just design your life how you want it to be. And that's how I've always. And so once I started to get some confidence in business and realize that, oh, actually, you know what, if I just do it in a way that aligns to me, then it's probably going to work out. Once I realized that, and then went, okay, this is how I do business. Some people that will work for, others they'll say, oh, I could never do it that way, and that's fine. It's really, I think, about finding your way and doing what's natural to you, and then it's more likely to work. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it totally does, because I think I'm kind of like the same person. I have to almost box myself into a corner sometimes to
Yeah.
but by like burning every bridge that I could have gone back to.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And so there's like,
oh yeah,
you live in a cabin in the woods now, so you better get to it. Like, you know, that's pretty much the whole strategy. And
I loved it when you told me that. That was just so cool.
Yeah. And I noticed on your website, your like tagline is no plan B. And so is that kind of that same thought?
Yes. Yeah. I've got that tattooed on my arm. Like that Anthony Robbins quote of, if you want to take over the island, you have to be prepared to burn the boats, meaning that, you know, you've got to have no plan B. You can't, and I'm a big believer that if you've got a safety net, you're more likely to take it well before you really need to. And if you don't have a safety net, you've got to make it work. And I think we have so much more capacity and capability in us than what we realize, and we don't squeeze all the juice out of the lemon. And so my view is, don't have a plan B. Decide what it is that you want. And yes, you need different strategies, and you'll have to change tactics along the way, but don't let any of those obstacles stop you from getting that ultimate goal. Just say that's the only option, so I've got to get there somehow. And I think that take the safety net away, and it's quite amazing what you can create, what you can achieve yourself. So yeah, that's sort of my life mantra. And, you know, there's been heaps of times where I've felt like, oh, this is too hard, or I can't do this, or this is impossible. And I've looked down on my wrist and looked at no plan B and gone, you know, it is totally possible. Just find another way, and just keep going towards that goal. And coming to New York was one of those things. And when I decided that that's what I wanted to do, I had no idea how I was going to be able to do that. But I just made that the vision and made everything in my site all about that. And yeah, and then you wake up and you go, oh, I'm here. How did that happen? Yeah.
That's amazing. So in talking about getting to know yourself, what would you say is your greatest strength, and how did you determine that was your strength?
This is a really interesting question. So I have always been very focused on personal development. So I've always invested a lot of money and a lot of time for the last probably 20 years into developing myself. So whether that be having life coaches, now, you know, podcasts, reading lots of books, going to lots of conferences, courses, always looking at, you know, how can I better myself to achieve whatever it is that I'm trying to achieve at that time. And part of that has been recognizing that over the journey of life, I have changed a lot. And, you know, what I want changes, who I am, what my strengths and weaknesses change, they change as I develop myself. So I find that there are certain things that I was actually better at before that I'm not as good at now, and vice versa. It just depends what my focus is, or what I'm working on. But it's actually funny timing, because I recently had to get a sort of anonymous audit done on me by people that I respected, and I just got the results back recently, and it was quite interesting when I looked at it, because the weaknesses I looked at, and I totally recognised all of the weaknesses that were outlined, but I looked at them and thought, you know what, I probably wouldn't have the strengths that were highlighted if I didn't have those weaknesses. So they really came together. So it was sort of like there were areas, it's like, oh, you're really passionate and inspiring in your, focus on being driven and what it is that you want, and being really clear on that and bringing people along the journey. And then on the weaknesses, it was sort of talked about, being too strong in my viewpoint at times, and not having enough balance. And so it's sort of like, well, yeah, I'm like, yeah, it can't be both. So, are they, so like, I look at the weaknesses and go, yeah, I know I probably would like to be not so much that, or I'd probably like to not do that so much, but really, if it's at the risk of not being able to live those strengths, well, people are just going to have to deal with it, because that's sort of, I have to have those if I'm going to be strong in the areas that I'm strong at. So, and I think for me, like, I've always been a visionary. I've always been really clear on what it is I want at any particular time, and been really driven to go, okay, well, I'll just make that happen. I'll design my life to make that happen. And I don't work well within society's guidelines or rule book. I don't really live very well within that, and so, but that's allowed me to not really worry too much about what people think, and just go for whatever it is that I'm wanting to achieve, and design things the way that will make that happen. So yeah.
What other unconventional things do you do? Like, do you do like different times, or like different days of the week, or what? When you say unconventional in society, what do you mean?
Well, I guess so. Probably the thing that people find most interesting is the fact that I have 3 young boys, and they are in Australia at the moment, and will be for the next 12 months whilst I launch in New York City, and travelling and pursuing my personal and professional goals whilst having 3 young kids. I think people have found, how do you do that? But in fact, and people often ask me about the question around, do I have mother guilt, which is, a typical, thing that is talked about way too much, I think. But my view has always been that I've always looked at my kids and thought, well, how do I want them to live, or what would be my biggest dream for them? And ultimately, when I asked myself that question, it was, well, I really want them to pursue whatever their dream is. Like, I don't want them to sort of go, oh, I really wanted to be, in a band, but, it's way too hard, so I'm going to go and study and be a lawyer, but I don't really want to be that. Or, I really wanted to travel, but I sort of felt that I had to get a job. Like, I want them to just go and live their dreams, no matter how difficult they may seem, no matter how many people might say, oh, that's too hard. I just want them to go for it. And I thought, well, hang on a minute. Who am I to tell them to do that if I'm not prepared to do that? I'm no one to tell them how to live their life, but I'm everything to show them. And so I thought, well, rather than to work out how I best wanted to be the best mum, was to really lead by example. And so I've talked to a lot of them about, this is my dream, and I really need to pursue that. And they are so engaged with that, and it's sort of like a family project in a way, that we're all on board for mum to launch in New York, and for them to then come over when the timing is right, and for us to have this experience. So yeah, I think the way that I sort of manage my family personal life can be challenging for some, but it absolutely works for us. And I'm a big believer that, whatever works for you and your family is perfect. And it doesn't matter what anyone else thinks. It doesn't matter what everyone else does. You just do what's right for you guys, and then it'll be perfect. And that's what's been for us. And it's, it's great.
I love that perspective, because I think you can only be good to other people if you're good to yourself first. And if you're happy, you can be, happy and everything that everyone else needs and be supportive. But if you're not happy, you are good to no one, not even to yourself.
Oh,
so,
totally. Yeah, and can be a detriment to them. Yeah. Exactly. So that's probably the key thing I get asked about, actually. Yeah.
And so the final question, this is one that I actually found on your website as well. When you ask people kind of what do they want to leave on the world, what impact do they want to have? What is your impact that you want to have on the world?
So the impact that I want to have on the world is that I really want more people living the life that's right for them. I talk to so many people who are not really that happy, whether it be in their relationships, in their job, where they live, whatever it may be, but they feel that it's too late, or this is how my life is and there's no way I can sort of change that. And that's not true at all. And I really want to live a life that shows people that you can choose and design your life however you want. You can change that at any time. You can change your mind. It is your journey, and just live how you want to live, and don't worry about what anyone else thinks. And if I can live that and inspire others to perhaps break the mold for themselves and perhaps make a change that they've always wanted to change, then that would be a great legacy for me.
I love that. That's really inspirational to me. So,
thank you.
Thank you for
sharing. And I actually think that is critically important, because I think if more people are doing that, we will have much happier people, and I think that creates a lot less negativity in our world, which I think is what we really need. So that's my thing.
I love it. Happiness for everyone.
Why not?
Thank you so much for being here today and supporting my new podcast. I'm really excited.
I'm so proud of you. I'm really proud of you. It's awesome.
I'm very excited. So where can people find out more about you and about your company online?
Okay, so I think the best place to go is suellenwatts.com, because that then references my other businesses, and you can go and look at all the different things I'm involved in and what I'm doing. So SUE-ELLENWATTS.com.
Perfect. I will link that in the show notes. Thank you so much for being here, and have a great day in New York.
Thank you, Kate. Thanks so much.
Awesome.